Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku was the quirkless ghost of the city? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku's heart raced along with the footsteps that trailed him. All he was trying to do was find a place to sleep. In gang territory. Idiot, he chided himself. Demon, he really needed new shoes. The red ones that he's had for almost 4 years were just tearing at the seams. Running away from angry gang members in the worn-down soles proved to be more difficult than he thought. Izuku glanced back at the men chasing him and ran harder as they got closer. Quickly making a decision, he ducked into an alleyway. Facing the wood board in front of him, Izuku whipped out 2 knives that should be sharp enough to scale the wall. "Where the F did that brat go?" a man's voice shouted. That was Izuku's cue to leave. He plunged the knife into the wall, repeating the motion upward until he reached the top of the small building and collapsed of exhaustion. Sliding his fabric mask off his chin, Izuku started setting up his sleeping bag for the night. The early spring wind was cold, but it was better than getting a bullet through the head. He mentally thanked Himari for teaching him how to scale walls. Aizawa Shuda's patrol was quite uneventful. This city was usually bustling with crime, but tonight it seemed quiet. Shoyuda didn't live around the downtown part of town, but he came around this neighborhood often because of the abundance of the homeless and criminal gangs. Easy takedowns that didn't attract media attention. The civilians here were informed of the hero Eraserhead and much appreciated him. They also understood to keep his title and quirk under wraps, which Shoyuda appreciated. When Shoyuda thought he had sat on a rooftop and watched over downtown long enough, he stood to go home. As he climbed down the fire escape, Shuda's ear caught a long string of curses coming from a gruff voice on the street. "That brat. Thinking he could come on our turf. Fucking idiotic besties. Go after them." Shoyuda hopped over rooftops, following the running men who appeared to be chasing. A kid? What the hell? Eraserhead slipped his goggles over his eyes and just barely caught the kid slide into an alleyway. Ready to fight if the older men found him, Shoyuda silently watched the kid from afar. Shoyuda felt anxiety wash over him as he realized the kid had put himself right into a dead end. But the kid seemed to have other plans than to be found by thugs. Shoyuda watched as the kid stabbed 2 knives into the wall and started climbing it. He reached the roof just in time, and those gang members didn't catch a glimpse of him. To say Shoyuda was impressed was an understatement. The kid seems to be 9 from his height, and quite skinny. It was a wonder how a small kid could scale a wall like it was child's play. He watched as the kid slid his hoodie off and his mask down to reveal dark green hair and a squishy face. The kid took multiple breaths as if to calm himself. Shoyuda decided to approach the little guy as the boy dug in his backpack. "Kid," he spoke in a monotone voice. The greenette flinched and reached to his belt. Slowly turning and lifting the mask back up, the kid's grip tightened around what looked like a throwing knife. The kid and Hero made eye contact and the boy's grip on the knife seemed to loosen. "Oh, you're Eraserhead," the kid stated, voice flat. "So you know who I am?" "Everyone does. You're pretty much the only reason the crime rate hasn't caused me gray hairs," the boy scoffed as if amused by Shuda's surprise. "How old are ya, kid?" "9. Shoyuda asked. "Why does everyone think that?" "I'm not that short, am I?" the boy groaned dramatically, and the theatrics reminded Shoyuda of Hisashi. Would the boy give him any information without stalling, though? Shoyuda sighed and spoke again. "Well then, if you don't tell me, I guess I'll just assume you're 9. The kid huffed. "Name's Deku, I'm 11. You gonna lecture me for loitering on someone's property or nah?" "'Cause I'm tired as hell." "Let me escort you home then if you're so tired, Deku," Shoyuda offered, emphasizing on the kid's apparent fake name. Who used the word blockhead as a fake name anyway? Deku winced at that. The kid clicked his tongue and his eyes held a nervousness that Shoyuda hadn't seen before in the boy. That I was hoping Eraserhead, that maybe this could be my home for tonight? Shuda's brain clicked into place. Deku's eyes rose in fear. "He's gonna take me. They'll find me." Sheet. The kid started mumbling about something and picked up his backpack in a hurry. "I gotta go," he muttered and started walking towards the edge of the roof. F dash, the kid said, trying to keep his voice low enough so Shoyuta couldn't hear it. Shuta's instinct kicked in. When someone ran away, it was Shuta's job to catch them. He threw his capture weapon, and it wrapped around Deku's wrist. "Kid!" Deku's emerald eyes shone with fear in the moonlight. "Please don't. Don't make me use it," Deku whimpered. "Kid, come on, let's go, it's not safe," Shoyuta said, the concern in his voice rising. Deku lifted his jacket sleeve to reveal an arm made up of mostly scar tissue, and to Shuta's horror, Deku took out a knife and made a quick cut on his arm. Shuta's breath caught as the boy's skin came up off his forearm, like a snake shedding its skin. Deku didn't even wince as his bare flesh became exposed to the air. Fresh blood collected on the hem of the boy's old sweater. Shoyuta was too busy watching this. This kid hurt himself, just to escape, to notice his capture weapon fall limp on the roof's floor. Shoyuta could see the kid's muscles and tendons. "Kid, stay right there, I'll get it." Something steely and flexible hit Shoyuta in the face and wrapped around his goggles, rendering him unable to see. "Don't follow me, Eraser," Deku's voice said, putting as much venom as a tired kid could into those 4 words. It took Shoyuta over 2 minutes to get the strange substance off his face. As the sheet flew to the ground, Shoyuta realized it was FNG skin. The kid used his skin as a weapon. Shoyuta searched the city for a bit, hoping maybe, just maybe he might find the boy again. What if he was bleeding out? After 30 minutes, Shoyuta completely gave up. He fed up big time. Maybe going home to his cats would make him feel better. All Izuku could hear was the flap, flap, flap of his shoes as he ran. He ran into a corner. "Anywhere, anywhere, anywhere but there, I can't go back. I can't. Izuku gracefully ran into a dumpster that was mostly empty. Falling to his knees, he cried out in pain as he looked at his healing arm. "It'll heal, it always does." Izuku leaned his head against the cold metal of the dumpster and cried silently as people walking past him glanced over in pity at the sobbing, bloody boy. "Oh, how sad. I hope he finds his parents. Oh, how sad. Hopefully, some hero will find him." Himari was his hero. She was gone. He didn't want any other hero. Oh, how sad. I hope someone calls a medic for his arm. What the hell? What a druggie. A victim of circumstance. He must have chosen that life. He just wanted Himari. Why, he thought, why did you leave? It was too soon, so why? Why did you let them put a bullet through your head when it should have gone through mine? Shoyuta gently closed the door to the apartment and took his boots off. On his way home he had given that kid a lot of thought. He concluded that Deku would be okay, probably not bleeding to death in an alleyway, if whatever happened with his arm had been a quirk. A pretty gross quirk if you want Shuta's opinion. His capture weapon held leftover bits of flesh and blood speckled on it like paint. Should I keep it for DNA analysis? No, Shoyuta thought, it would be an invasion of privacy. Though, a homeless kid with a harmful quirk should be in foster care or something along those lines. Shoyuta wondered how the kid had evaded the system for so long. Did anyone even know he was gone? Did anyone care? Shoyuta just hoped that he might see Deku again. The kid had a lot of potential. "Sho!" An energetic voice cried, startling Shoyuta. Shoyuta rolled his eyes comedically. Of course, Hizashi was going to be awake because he held off grading papers until Sunday night. His husband bounded up to him and bumped him on the nose. "Someone looks grumpy," Hizashi said, impish grin widening. "I'm not. I just met someone tonight and—" "It was weird," Shoyuta said. "It was a kid." Hizashi huffed. "Was it a fanboy? You always get flustered when they come up to you. It's adorable." "No, it wasn't a fanboy," Shoyuta hissed with no real bite. "He was homeless and he was small. Wouldn't tell me his real name either. Some thugs were chasing him." "Oh, what's so special about him, Sho?" "Oh, I don't know, Zashi. Maybe it was the fact he scaled a wall and then used his skin to attack me." Hizashi gave him a suspicious look. "You see crazy people on the street a lot. I mean, it's sickest to not have a home, but, he said, It takes a lot more than what you described for someone to catch your eye, babe. What made you so nervous about the kid? His eyes, maybe. Shoyuta said quietly. He looked so scared of me. Or at least when I tried to touch him. He had the look of someone who had seen too much, you know? And it spooked me a bit. I've never seen a kid look at me like that. Hisashi hummed in understanding. With a sigh, he asked slowly, You want to find him again, don't you? You want to help? Shoyuta nodded. I don't understand why I feel the need to. He didn't even want to use his quirk either. I feel quite bad. I'll get you some coffee, okay? Do you want to call the detective? Shoyuta sighed. He was in too deep. He had to help that problem child. Izuku awoke to someone tapping his cheek, and quickly he was aware of his surroundings. He grabbed the person's wrist tightly before opening his eyes. He awoke slowly, lifting his head off the empty dumpster. Kaito! What the hell? You know not to do that. Izuku hissed at the older boy, who chuckled mischievously. I know. You don't want to accidentally flip me again, do you, Mito? Izuku pouted. That it's not good for your back, ya idiot. Yeah, well, it's not good for your neck to sleep leanin' on a dumpster, ya hear? Get yourself together. Kaito laughed. Izuku rolled his eyes with a grin. Kaito was like an older brother to him, though Izuku wouldn't admit it. The guy was also homeless, but at least he had his family with him. Kaito's house had burned down 2 years ago and Izuku had helped his family find all the homeless shelters in the area and the cheapest places to eat. Kaito was a good man and was working towards getting back on his feet. Word around the street is that Deku tried helping an injured gang member in exchange for a windowsill to sleep. Didn't go so well for you, did it, Squirt? Kaito said empathetically. Izuku looked at his beat-up sneakers in shame. Look, little dude, I know you like helping people. Hell, you've probably saved more ladies from creepy dudes around here than Eraserhead has. But you have to draw the line somewhere. You know the gang on the south side aren't the most friendly bunch, Kaito scolded. Be more careful next time, hero. Izuku beamed at him. Yeah, I will. Kaito reached out to ruffle Izuku's hair, but quickly put his hand down. Come on, Squirt, it's free taiyaki day at the market. I'm starved. Hey mama, where are we going? Inko Midoriya was a mess of a woman. After her husband left, she had started drinking, gaining weight, and overall neglecting her duty as a mother. All she could do was think about how it was Izuku's fault that her husband left her. If only she hadn't given birth to such a useless child. The car rolled to a stop next to an alleyway with no one around it. Get out of the car, Izuku. Izuku, just a small 6-year-old, knew that his mom had drunk before taking him to this place. He knew not to bother Mama when she was drunk. Izuku hopped out of the car with no real energy since it was around 10 o'clock at night. Looking at the looming, dark alleyway that Izuku would get to know as commonplace, he felt intimidated. Stay there, Izuku. Izuku stayed. Because Mama said so. Whimpering in confusion as his mother's car drove away, he slid against the wall in the alleyway and curled up with his all-might figurine. He stayed in that alley for almost 2 days, either crying or wishing for food or water. One day, a haggard-looking teen with pale blue hair and striking red eyes came up to him, eyes full of pity. Sighing, the teen bent down to look Izuku in the eyes. What's your quirk, little one? The teen's rasping voice asked. Izuku shifted nervously. I don't have one, he choked out. The teen smiled ill-intently, though Izuku couldn't see it, for it was the first smile he had seen in a long time. Come with me, kiddo. Sensei will shelter you. This man, Izuku would come to know as Shigaraki Tamura, was just leading him into 2 years of complete agony. Sensei would not give shelter, Sensei would give hell. Izuku looked down at his forearm as Kaito speed-walked in front of him. The skin was raw and thin, making his arm look very unnaturally red. He pulled his sleeve back down, though he desperately wanted to itch the skin. Come on, slowpoke, or else all the taiyaki will be gone. Izuku took a deep breath and put a smile on his face for Kaito. Let's hurry then. The teen grabbed Izuku by the arm impatiently. He started speaking to the younger boy without turning to look at him. I'm Shigaraki Tamura, what's your name? He asked. Midoriya Izuku. I'm sure Sensei will like you. You said you're quirkless, right? Sensei will love that, Shigaraki stated, a hint of giddiness in his voice. Izuku was surprised, and though he didn't trust the stranger, this comment made him a bit happier. No one ever thought his quirklessness was a good thing. After a bit of walking, Shigaraki led him to a base. It was an old rickety bar that was being tended to by an older man made of mist. As soon as Shigaraki and Izuku walked through the door, Shigaraki spoke with the mist man. Izuku stayed quiet. He was a quiet kid. It was his nature to be quiet. I found one, Shigaraki said eagerly. One Sensei could use. He's quirkless. Do you know of any complications? What if people are looking for him? We can't be found out, especially in this experimenting stage, the mist man's deep voice said. Exactly. He's for experimenting. Sensei will deal with any complications, Kurogyri. Plus, he's just a kid. The two men spoke as if Izuku wasn't there, and Izuku wished he wasn't. He stayed as quiet as possible when adults argued. Or talked. Fine, Kurogyri reached out to the child. Izuku flinched away, and Kurogyri gave him a look. It's okay, child. Sensei will take good care of you. 2 taiyaki, please. Don't forget the Nutella, Ms. Nakamura. Kaito turned to Izuku and smiled. Don't you just love the kindness of people, Mito? Izuku felt a horrible sense of vertigo as the mist man touched his shoulder. Izuku felt sick when he suddenly wasn't in the bar. He hadn't even had time to marvel over the mist man's quirk like he usually did. Instead, he fell on the cold, hard concrete floor and dry-hurled the non-existent contents of his stomach. Ah, Midoriya Izuku, I presume? That voice sent shivers down Izuku's mind. He went dizzy, and he saw an image in his mind of himself, bloody and broken on the floor, whites of his eyes exposed, hair matted with blood. He dry-heaved again. That I'll take that as a yes, said the silky yet baneful voice said, let us talk, little one. Izuku forced himself up. He had no idea what was going on, but he decided that he should probably listen to these people. When Izuku stood, vertigo became worse as he stumbled into a chair, too frail to knock it over. Grabbing onto the chair for dear life, he brought himself to his feet and faced the menacing voice. Izuku looked up to see a man with a disfigured face and multiple tubes extracting from his abdomen and throat. It's rude to look at others' injuries, young one. I may be blind, but your curious stare is strong, the man said with a cold chuckle. I'm known as All for One, but you should call me Sensei. Someone in a white doctor's coat stepped out into the light and set down a plate of food. It wasn't much, just some rice ball, but Izuku greedily ate them. Not eating for 2 days does things to your manners. Izuku looked up at the man that had given Izuku the food to thank him, but his voice caught in his throat. It was Dr. Tsubasa. The same doctor that had pronounced him quirkless. Izuku looked down at his shoes, any words he had died on his tongue. Izuku decided right then and there that he wouldn't ask questions unless asked. These people were terrifying. So, is it true you're quirkless? After Kaito and Izuku had eaten their taiyaki, they parted ways and Izuku headed towards the library. The library was his favorite place in the world. It was quiet, but not too quiet, and aisles of information laid on shelves. Izuku had only ever been to preschool and kindergarten, and barely remembered any of it. All he remembered is that it wasn't enjoyable and that people didn't like him there. People didn't seem to like him anywhere. But at the library, no one cared. The library was small heaven on earth where people came to de-stress, stress, and everything in between. No one scary or rude ever came to the library, just people who needed knowledge or wanted entertainment. Izuku could hear children laughing in the kids section, teens studying and bopping their head to music in the teen books, and the occasional loud page turn from the adult section. Izuku's favorite section was the fiction. While he did read many non-fiction books to cover for the multiple years of school he had missed, fiction had always been his favorite. He could easily transfer his mind to a different world, a fantasy land where he was an ignorant background character. Sensei kept rambling about quirks and how they worked, talking to Izuku like an old friend. But Izuku knew better. This man was dangerous. He had told Izuku how he could take and give away quirks. All for One told Izuku about how the world cared not for the weak, but the powerful. Izuku didn't care. Izuku didn't want power, he just wanted to save people like All Might. That had always been his dream. Sensei was trying to change his mind about All Might and it was not working at all. Izuku might be quiet and compliant, but his inner workings were more stubborn than any person you'll ever meet. Luckily, no one in the warehouse saw his All Might figurine or at least didn't care about it. He clutched onto it for dear life as two more people in white coats dragged him away in what seemed to be a prison of sorts. They told him to go sit in the cell next to a young adult woman with bright turquoise hair. As the doctors locked the cell door, the woman looked at him with intimidating deep brown eyes. Her clothing was simple, but she looked uncomfortable in the white shirt and black track pants. The woman waited until they could no longer hear footsteps near the prison. She turned to him with wonder in her eyes. The woman pressed her hands to the bars that separated them and beckoned him to come closer. Izuku scooted towards the woman. As he got closer, he noticed her small brown eyes softened. Her hair became a softer shade of blue, fading into purple at the ends. She smiled a soft smile that reminded Izuku of how his mom smiled before he was diagnosed quirkless. The woman touched Izuku's shoulder gently and started to speak in a rough but pretty voice that reminded Izuku of a singer. "My name is Ari, what's your sweetie?" "Emitaraya Izuku," he replied cautiously. Himari asked a question that had been over-asked too many times. "What's your quirk?" "I don't have one," Izuku replied, yawning. "Quirkless." A single tear rolled down her cheek. Finally, "You aren't like the others, little Izu," she sighed. "I promise, with my whole heart, we'll get out of here." Izuku looked at her with eyes so full of hope and determination, it transferred over to Himari. She stroked his hair as the boy fell asleep on the ground. Small sighs indicating nightmares came out of his mouth ever so often. They had only spoken a few words to each other, but their bond had been sealed. Himari already loved him like her own child. He won't be like the others. Izuku's scars aren't the best things to see, so he usually covered his face in public. Unfortunately, he had built up a reputation in the part of town for being a vigilante. If you ask Izuku, he wouldn't call himself that. He usually only did small things like saving women from predators, stopping assaults, talking to people who needed it, helping wounded gang members and such. He never went out to openly fight any villains, and he never went out in front of heroes. It was just the gangs mostly. Sometimes they thought he was being biased when he helped, so he collected a couple of enemies. He was known as Deku. He never liked giving out his real name. Izuku had a mask with a fresh design of teeth on it and a dark green hoodie that he wore when in public doing vigilante stuff. He couldn't wear it in actual places in the rare case that anyone recognized him. Izuku had learned this the hard way. The issue with not wearing a mask was Izuku really hated his face. While his arms and legs were basically mutilated and blanketed in scars, it was the ones on his face he was most self-conscious about. Clothes could easily cover arm, leg and chest scars. But facial scars were the worst. Not because he was worried about how attractive he looked. No, that was the thing that least mattered to him. Izuku just effing hated it when people walking down the aisles in the library would look at his scars through bookshelves and then either look at him in pity or look away. It was annoying. It made Izuku feel like a dangerous caged zoo animal. The greenette had permanent dark circles that were etched on his face, so they were kind of like scars. Izuku had a scar on his left eyebrow, so it looked like someone shaved half of his eyebrow off. He had one directly under his right eye and one under his chin. Another scar traced his nose straight across, and another two on his lips. He had so many smaller and older white ones it was hard to count them all. Izuku walked to the computers holding a manga called One Punch Man. He was halfway through the series, and Izuku thought it was interesting how artists had predicted quirks in the future with superhero manga and comic books. He turned on the monitor and put on some library headphones. Izuku opened YouTube and played his favorite song and started to read. 5 hours later, after catching up on the recent hero news, Izuku heard the loudspeakers announce that the library closing for the night. Izuku sighed heavily. He hated leaving the small peaceful place that was the library. He packed up his overstuffed backpack and headed out. Izuku didn't feel like sleeping anyway. Humming a tune, he turned to his favorite part of the city. Izuku approached the creek that ran through the creek and threw stones in the seemingly dark water, though in the daytime, the water was sparkly blue. He liked the creek because it was hidden away and quiet. The water was shallow enough to put your hand through and touch the smooth rock at the bottom. He could hear the faint sound of civilization and the trickle of the creek water. Izuku sighed contently and looked up at the stars, finding constellations he had read about. A rustle in leaves snapped him out of his thoughts. Izuku propped himself on his elbows, preparing to run in case of a threat. A man wearing all black came out of the bushes slowly as if he were coming up to a wild animal. Izuku recognized him immediately. Eraserhead, Izuku sighed, not having enough energy to be remotely excited, scared, or nervous. Eraser cleared his throat. "Call me Aizawa, kiddo," he said. Aizawa came to sit next to Izuku and appeared to be unhostile. Good, Izuku didn't want to run. He didn't even want to move. "Why'd you come here?" "It's like 2 a.m., Izuku asked, though he didn't know why he was talking with a hero who he had fought. "Insomnia. This place is near my apartment. Sometimes I come here to think at night," Aizawa said nonchalantly. Izuku nodded and huffed a bit of amusement. "Oh yeah? I come here to not think. It's quite nice out here, no distractions, you know?" Aizawa hummed in agreement. "I really didn't expect to see you here, kiddo." "Neither did I," Izuku retorted. "Am I allowed to ask about why?" Aizawa gestures vaguely. Izuku understands his message. He decides to trust this man a little bit tonight, mostly because he was tired. "Shoot," Izuku said, "but I'm not answering if I don't want to." "Okay. What's your quirk?" "Starting with the hard one? I don't have a quirk," Izuku said plainly. Aizawa turned to face him with a confused expression. It would never get old. What happened to your skin on, that night then?" "It's not my quirk. I'm quirkless. That one was just forced on me, or in other words, it's artificial-ish," Izuku says, almost like he's questioning himself. "Well, what does the quirk do?" Izuku didn't care enough to worry about Aizawa using this information to catch him or not. He was too tired, and he made dumb decisions when he was tired. "First off, I can control my skin. I make a cut on my arm, and the skin within a foot of it can be taken off the body part and the user can control it. Also, I can see thermal radiation. So if someone was behind that tree, I would be able to tell if they were there. I don't use that part of the quirk much because it gives me headaches. It's quite hard to explain, but it's a lizard quirk without the mutation part. My skin also hardens, but it doesn't become scales." Izuku kept rambling about how complicated the quirk was, but Aizawa placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to tell me all of it tonight, but can I ask more questions unrelated to your quirk?" Aizawa asked, looking quite overwhelmed by Izuku's explanation. "Of the quirk?" "Okay. Why are you homeless?" Aizawa quietly asked, as if scared of what Izuku's reaction was going to be. "Oh, my mom. She didn't want me. And my dad left." Aizawa blinked. "Did you run away?" "No," Izuku said. "My mom. She left me in an alleyway when I was tiny. Something about making my dad leave. I don't remember, truthfully." Izuku started to tear up. He had never told anyone about his parents except for Himari. Aizawa looked up at the stars. "Do you ever wish for something? Anything in the world you could have?" Izuku let out a watery chuckle, the ability to sleep. Aizawa snorted at that. "For real though?" Izuku sighed. "I just want a chance to save lives. Or maybe go back to save a life. Always wanted to be a hero, but you know." "What?" Aizawa asked. "It's impossible. I'm a homeless kid with mental and physical damage that can't be fixed. I have a quirk that isn't even mine and I hate using it." Izuku half shouted at the sky. "Kid, I should be dead," he cried. Tears flowed down Izuku's face freely. "No matter what I do, I know it's hopeless. My body hurts all the time. I can't afford food or a place to sleep. I can't save people and I'll never be able to because all my life I've been told I couldn't do it. But I was too stubborn to believe it and now," Izuku choked down a sob, I have this dream that will never come true, resting on my shoulders, and— You can't help wanting something you can't have, Aizawa interrupted him. Izuku whimpered and nodded. Can't use this quirk that I have. Someone was killed for me to have this quirk, and using it doesn't feel right. Aizawa's head lifted a bit. You dash. Izuku cut him off in a nasty tone. I didn't kill anyone, Eraserhead. Aizawa let out a small "Yoe," and the two stayed silent for a beat. Why are you even talking to me? We have no reason to trust each other, and dash, Izuku starts to say then stops. You're not going to take me away, he says, voice low at a whisper. Aizawa turns to him. Give me a strange vibe. I know for a fact you won't hurt me because you're the vigilante Deku. While you're not precisely a vigilante, that's what people downtown call you. I've heard a lot about your kindness. I also saw you scale a wall without any struggle. Most of the students at UA can't do that. Izuku stayed quiet as Aizawa seemed to struggle with his words. And you're just a kid. You shouldn't be like this, with all those scars. It's not normal. Aizawa finishes. You think I don't know that? I want to have a home, I want to reverse my past, I want a normal life. I'd be weird if I didn't. But I can't, no one wants me. It's not safe. Himari looked at Izuku through the bars as she told him their escape plan. Izuku listened intently, telling her his opinion or suggestions ever so often. Every time Himari looked at Izuku, she just felt like breaking through these bars and hugging him. She wanted to protect him forever. What a mother could be. Hey Aizu, when we get out of here, do you want to stay with me? We can be a small family. How does that sound? Izuku looked at her with such surprise and happiness in his eyes that her hair turned a sunflower yellow. I would really like that, Himari-san. It would be fine for you to live with me, you know. Izuku was suddenly back to being a little kid. He looked up at Aizawa, too shocked to say anything. Himari's blank, dead eyes clouded his thoughts. It's not safe, I told you. The last person. Izuku said, unable to continue because of the tears that clogged his throat. Aizawa looked at him. You lost someone important, didn't you? Izuku nodded, as thick, bottled-up tears slid down his face. Aizawa pulled him into a hug, and for once, Izuku wasn't afraid of being touched. Shoyuta was so confused and tired, but mostly confused. He came down to the creek to think. But instead, he found the same kid who was responsible for Shoyuta not being able to sleep. Now he was holding the kid, Deku, in his arms while the little guy cried enough to overflow the creek. He knew the kid was called Deku on the streets downtown where he was responsible for multiple acts of kindness and bravery. Whimpers that came from the kid's mouth were a lot more concerning than him being a vigilante. Deku kept repeating, I didn't want her to go. Over and over into Shuta's scarf, each word lined with emotion that had seemed to be long overdue. Once Deku's sobs had slowed down, Shoyuta spoke again. My offer still stands. I'm a pro hero, so I can protect myself. My husband is also a pro, and dash. Deku pulled away slowly. He pulled up his sleeve, wiped his eyes, and bit his lip aggressively. I need time to think. You don't know these people as I do, he said nervously. Is there something you're not telling me? Shoyuta asked. Just because I poured my feelings to you and ruined your capture weapon with tears, doesn't mean you don't know everything about me, Aizawa. And well, Shoyuta interrupted him. I'm not saying you have to tell me everything, and I'm not saying you have to trust me. I just think that you shouldn't be on the streets. You need help for those injuries, dash. No. Deku whisper shouts to Aizawa, don't take me to any hospitals. Shoyuta questions. No hospitals. Okay. So the boy had an intense fear of hospitals. It wasn't weird. But Shoyuta wondered why. Why? That was all he could think about with Deku. I don't think I can go with you. I'm not. That's fine, kiddo, Shoyuta said, then he thought for a moment. Can I give you my phone number? Deku looked at him. I don't have a phone, he said. Do you know how to use a payphone? Why yeah. Give me something to write on, Shoyuta said. Deku reached into his beat-up yellow backpack and pulled out an equally beat-up sketchbook. He handed Shoyuta the book gingerly, and it was apparent to Shoyuta that he cared for this book a lot. You can look through it before writing your number down. It's almost full. Maybe if I was better at writing kanji I would. I could take notes but I only know the basics of how to read. So I sketch out stuff. Helps. Deku mumbled loud enough for Shoyuta to hear. Shoyuta nodded. He carefully flipped open the book and looked at the first page. A woman with long turquoise hair covered the entire page. She looked melancholy, and a tear traced her realistically drawn face. Her soft brown eyes seemed watery and glazed over. It was the most beautiful picture Shoyuta had ever seen, and an 11-year-old homeless vigilante drew it. Shoyuta kept flipping through the book and momentarily forgot what he was supposed to be doing. There were multiple pages of heroes in action poses or battle screen caps. Shoyuta saw one of himself as Eraserhead too. He was drawn on top of a building, raven-colored hair flowing in the wind behind bright yellow goggles as he crouched like a bird about to take off into the skies. There were many drawings of All Might in his signature pose, and there was even one done in watercolor. But the person that covered the most pages was the same women that had been drawn on the first page. All of the drawings of the women were fully colored and each of them had different colored hair and different expressions that matched up with the hair. Where'd you learn how to do this? Shoyuta asked, a bit odd. I'm self-taught, Deku said. I used the supplies at the library downtown. Because I'm always flat broke. Shoyuta nodded and kept looking through the sketchbook. He found a few pages that seemed overall darker than the others. The picture was a sketch of a woman with her back turned, and broken glass and empty bottles surrounded her. The next page after that had a young boy in his early teens looking down menacingly. He had shaggy hair and a hand covering his entire face except for a red eye that poked out between hair. The eye was the only thing colored on the page. The next page was quite concerning. Shoyuta could make out a black and white suit and part of an oxygen mask, but the other parts of the page were ripped off. Some parts were scratched out viciously. Finally, Shoyuta found a blank page that he could write on. He quickly wrote down his phone number. Shoyuta reached into his pocket and took out a couple of nickels. Keep these in your pocket. If anything happens, call me. I will not take you to any hospital, promise? Deku nodded. Thank you. The sun peeked out behind the trees across the creek. Deku scrambled to his feet. I have to go walk Itokuin's dog today. I forgot. Deku said in a light panic. Okay, be safe out there, kiddo, Shoyuta called to him. Deku looked over his shoulder and smiled at Shoyuta. I'll try. And thank you. Shoyuta gave him a small smile back. The kid headed back to town in a full-on sprint. How that kid could still smile was a wonder. Shoyuta was kind of disappointed that he hadn't taken the kid to, at the very least, the police, but giving Deku his phone number made him feel a little better. Whether the kid would ever trust him enough to call wasn't up to Shoyuta. I did as much as I could. A couple of days had passed since Izuku had talked with Eraser no Aizawa at the creek. He still didn't know what to think about the whole conversation they had. Izuku wasn't ready to think about it. The sun had already gone down and Izuku was trying to look for a place to sleep. Walking down the street in his beat-up shoes, he pulled his mask on. Since he was in gang territory, he could never be too careful. Suddenly a crash came from an alley a block or so down the road. Izuku activated one part of the quirk. He saw through each wall easily, but he could feel a headache start to come. Izuku quickly turned it off after memorizing where the people were. He climbed up a fire escape to get higher ground. Izuku looked down at the alley that he stood over. He saw a scene that seemed pretty standard for the area he was in. Two large men pushed a younger man with red spiky hair into the wall. The younger man grunted and hung his head low as the older men started to speak to him. Who the f you think you are, huh? We asked if you wanted to FING join us and you attack one of us? You'll be effing sorry unless you want to rethink our offer, you piece of shit. I'm the piece of shit, the redhead said. Your guy scared the living sheets out of me, of course, I'm gonna burn him. He got a gun, and I got fire, which one is worse? The redhead laughed nervously like he was trying to calm himself down. Or would you like to find out? I ain't fucking afraid of your lowlife, but... The two larger men's eyes widened, then they laughed. You're a PP man, you didn't even burn our guy to death. I'm thinking that you might not want to kill. Just let go, the redhead said darkly. One of the larger men pulled out a pistol and brought it up to the younger man's head. We ain't afraid to kill. Izuku hopped down from his place on top of the building onto the ground gracefully. De-escalating the situation without using a quirk was near impossible, so Izuku did what he had to do. He whipped out a pocket knife and made a large cut on his forearm. The men were still too surprised that Izuku cut himself after jumping off the roof that they didn't notice the foot-long piece of skin wrap around their pistol. Izuku willed his skin to disarm the gun and the men snapped out of their surprise. That's Deku, one of the men said. Yeah. He helped out with Sora's wounds the other day. The man that had pulled out the pistol turned to him and snarled. You're getting off easy today, kid. Here, have the guy, and teach him how not to be such a fucking a-hole. The men pushed the redhead to the ground angrily and walked out of the alleyway, taking their gun. Izuku sighed. He turned back to the red-haired guy and extended an arm to help him up. The man didn't take his bloody arm. Instead, the man used the wall to help himself up. The man looked at Izuku and said, I don't need your help. Izuku laughed. Michiko, get out of the alley, I have to tie this guy up, man. Why you are a vigilante? Why you? Thanks for saving me, I guess. Izuku smiled behind his mask. He looked back at the man and saw light burn marks all over his face and neck. You need some burn cream? I got some if you dash. Nah, this is the look I'm going for. Do you know where the nearest drugstore is? One that sells hair dye. So he was trying to hide his identity. Yeah, Izuku said, just go 3 blocks down and turn to your left, it should be around there. Oh cool, the man said, turning to leave. Hey, what's your name? Izuku almost thought the man was going to dismiss the question. But the man stopped at the edge of the alleyway and didn't look back at Izuku while he spoke. I don't have a name. And take care of your arm, kid. He's like me. He should find a nickname soon. The man turned the corner and disappeared. Izuku turned away with warmth in his heart. The man thanked him for saving him. That always made Izuku feel good. It made him feel like he did something. He turned back to where the other guy was. Izuku walked towards him cautiously. When he got close enough, he saw that the guy's shirt had been burned off to reveal a purple burn. Izuku bent down and felt the guy's pulse. It was steady, the guy should be okay, he decided. He got ready to leave the alleyway. He pulled down his sleeve so that the thin layer of skin that already healed over his bleeding flesh wouldn't get damaged. Izuku looked back at the man, who started to stir. Welp, that's my cue to leave. A gun ped as Izuku had set one foot out of the alleyway. Time seemed to slow as a gunshot rung out in Izuku's ears. I left him armed. I forgot. A woman next to Izuku screamed at the gunshot. Izuku turned to her and pushed her away as quickly as possible. Pain sprung from Izuku's shoulder. You're not that red-haired bee, the man who fired the gun yelled. Sheet. People were starting to approach Izuku, asking if he was okay. His head was swimming with a migraine. The pain in his shoulder was becoming unbearable. Unconsciousness nipped at the back of his mind. Hey kid, I'm going to call an ambulance, okay? No people. Get away. No hospitals. Keep these in your pocket. If anything happens, call me. I will not take you to any hospital, promise. Izuku remembered what to do. Using the thermal part of the quirk, he found a pay phone not too far off. He approached it, head and shoulder throbbing with pain. He took his hand off his shoulder only to realize it was covered in blood. Izuku reluctantly reached into the bag with his bloody hand. It would ruin his sketchbook and anything else in his bag. But what other choice did he have? It's not like he could use his other arm. Izuku opened the book to the page with Aizawa's number. He was on the brink of collapsing. Izuku knew that. Is it even worth it? To stay alive? Will they want me alive? Himari's voice filled his mind. You have to live, okay? For me. Izuku put the nickels in and punched in the number, even though it was quite hard to read with his vision starting to fade to black. It took 3 rings for Aizawa to pick up. Hello? Who is this? Izuku's mouth felt dry and tasted like iron. When he opened his mouth, bits of blood came out. It's dead. H help. Gunshot. Aizawa's voice sounded more worried now. He was trying to mask it with professionalism, but he was failing miserably. Where are you, kid? Can you tell me where you are? Izuku looked around. He saw the bright lit-up sign of the taiyaki shop. Titai. Shop. D downtown. Izuku's words were almost incomprehensible. His vision became darker by the second. Kid? Deku, come on. Stay awake, okay? I'm on my way. Izuku didn't respond. He couldn't. Izuku felt his body hit the floor, then darkness swallowed him. Beep. 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 Shoyuta was tired. That's all he could think. That and the heart monitor that he sat in front of. He turned his attention to the conversation behind him. How'd you get all this equipment here, Chiyo? It's quite heavy stuff. Hisashi asked. Chiyo, also known as Recovery Girl, an old close friend of Shoyuta and Hisashi chuckled. Well, for an old lady, I do have a lot of money. Butlers are useful at my age. She sighed. I'm glad you brought this boy to me, but a hospital would have been more rational. Shoyuta sounded very urgent. So I didn't question when he called since he's usually a very rational person. I really can't imagine why you wanted to make a makeshift hospital here in your apartment dash. The kid hates hospitals, and if he woke up in one it could be a hazard, Shoyuta stated, bluntness covering his real emotions. Chiyo hummed in acknowledgement. Well, I was able to get the bullet out pretty quickly. Shoyuta taking action and stopping the bleeding with his capture weapon saved him though, considering if Shoyuta didn't do that the kid would have lost too much blood. He didn't lose enough to need a transfusion, but when he wakes up he should take it easy. As for the state of his body, well, it's bizarre. His arms and legs are covered in scars, most of them made by knives. He had a bullet wound in his left hand, but it was sloppily taken care of many years ago. He also seems to have scars on his torso that I can only assume was from something plunging into his flesh. There's 3 of them. The damage inside of him, like his nervous system, is not something I can see as of right now. Though I can imagine how bad it is. Chiyo gives a small smile, and taking in what you told me about him being homeless. He might have not been to the doctors in a long time. I might have to vaccinate him. It'd be a miracle if we could find his medical records. You should take him to UA as soon as possible. I'll be his doctor for now. She puts the word doctor in air quotes. Hisashi nodded and looked back at his husband. You should wash that blood off your hands, he said. He won't wake up for a while. Shoyuta looked down at his hands, just noticing the cracked color of crimson covering his fingers. An image of green hair matted with the same color flashed before him. He stood up to head to the bathroom and looked back at the young boy on the cot. Shoyuta reprimanded himself for getting so attached. Beep. Beep beep. Izuku opened his eyes only to see the blinding color of white. White tiles lined the room where he was laying down. It reminded him of the hospital that he was diagnosed quirkless. Except, he couldn't move. Heavy straps held down his wrists, ankles, torso, and neck. He tried to squirm, but the straps made it impossible to do. His finger had a device that hooked up to the heart monitor that he could barely see out of the corner of his eye. Izuku's breathing quickened, and he almost tried for a scream, but a cold hand air shot over his mouth. He looked up to see a doctor with a blue mask covering their face. Cold yet hungry eyes looked at him, and Izuku imagined an equally cold and hungry smile behind the mask. The person put a GG in his mouth. Another doctor from across the room said something that sounded like, "Isn't it too early to do this?" But it sounded like it was whispered through a kilometer of mud. The doctor that loomed over Izuku grabbed something, a syringe, from the counter. It was empty. Or so it seemed. The doctor sauntered towards Deku's legs. The other doctor stood in the corner of the room, holding a blue notebook with the label, Experiment 234, Quirkless number 44. No, he must learn pain or the next experiment will be too much for his body to handle. The primary doctor's voice echoed in Izuku's head. Izuku was panicking now. Suddenly, he felt a small sharp pain between his toes. Nothing happened after that. Nothing. Lasted a few seconds. Then complete pain took over Izuku's chest. He couldn't scream. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't see. Izuku could only hear the ring of a long-sounding beep. Why wasn't it stopping? Why couldn't he see? Why did he hurt so much? Then, nothing hurt. Nothing at all. Izuku felt at peace. He felt free. The pain came flooding back in no time. Izuku felt himself being put back into his pain-constricted body. He jerked back to life. Izuku fell off something. His head was spinning and the headache only got worse when he backed into a wall. He looked at his hand only to see a device on his finger that hooked up to a machine. A machine that beeped. Izuku immediately ripped it off of his hand. His breaths began to quicken and he started to hyperventilate. Where am I? Why was I hooked up to that machine? Where am I? Where am I? Complete panic washed over Izuku. He pressed himself into the wall as much as possible. He tried focusing on his hands, but they were shaking too much. Was he mumbling? Was he around people? Did they find him? Look around, ground yourself. Izuku looked at the light green wall next to him and focused on all the light mint-colored bumps. He managed to calm the roaring in his ears to an extent. Phew. That. You need to breathe. Izuku snapped his head up at the calm voice. He looked up to see Aizawa kneeling a few feet in front of him. His sharp raven eyes seemed softer in this environment. Where am I? Izuku managed to choke out. His throat felt quite dry. My apartment. Your injuries might not be fully healed, you should rest. That's why. Izuku shook his head and rolled his shoulder. Nothing but the usual aches and pains. I'm fine. The quirk K kinda comes with a small healing F factor. IJ just need T to wait for some more blood to go to my H head. Aizawa pet his head in confusion. I pump out blood FA faster than A average B because of H how much blood I lose. Aizawa hummed a yes. I'm going to get you a glass of water. He left Izuku for a minute. He didn't dare move, he didn't know the rules. Aizawa brought back a glass of water a moment later. He handed it to Izuku. Izuku sniffed the water. He held it up to the light and stirred it slowly. He sniffed it once more, just out of habit. Finally, he took a sip. It tasted like water. So, Aizawa started, are you okay with spending the night? Izuku nodded slowly. He was exhausted. Someone other than himself had healed him. And it took a lot out of Izuku. Who healed me? Ever heard of Recovery Girl? It was her. She's a close friend of mine. Izuku nodded at the mention of Recovery Girl. Another hero saw him. Huh? Great. Just great. Izuku was probably going to freak about this tomorrow. She took the bullet out, right? Aizawa nodded. You up for some food? Izuku hummed. I could go for some. If it isn't too much trouble. It's not. Follow me. Aizawa went back to his nonchalant stoic self. Izuku stood and immediately felt a twist in his gut, but ignored it. The smell of homemade food wafted through the house. It made Izuku nostalgic for something he didn't remember. He gasped. Aizawa. My bee-bag. Did someone pick it up? Izuku tried not to sound desperate. Yeah. But it might be a bit dirty. Izuku groaned at himself. He remembered putting his bloody hand on his sketchbook. Well, shit, he mumbled as Aizawa handed him his bag. It was crusted with blood and dirt. Brilliant. Aizawa snorted. It's okay. Izuku scowled, but he aimed it towards himself. It's not okay. I spent most of my life savings on all the stuff in the backpack. I don't know how I'll ever replace Dash. I can replace anything you need. Now go and wash your hands, dinner's almost ready. The bathroom is the first door in the hallway on your right. Izuku gaped at the hero. Aizawa smiled. Go wash up, kiddo. Izuku walked to the bathroom in a trance. But why were these people being so nice? And why was he starting to trust them? Hisashi thought the kid was cute. Too thin and short for his age, making him look a lot younger than 11, but adorable nonetheless. His bird's nest of hair fell over his eyes when he looked down, and the dark pine color made him look like a soft bush. Freckles dotted his face and complemented his simple color scheme of green eyes and hair. The boy's eyes held a sort of traumatized version of determination. He wanted something and knew the cost of having it, but still wanted it, even if it was near impossible. After eating a small serving of rice, Deku had conked out in the guest bedroom. He didn't say much to them except thanking them over and over again or talking about Recovery Girl. He still didn't tell Shoyuta or Hizashi his real name, but Shoyuta said to let the kid warm up to them first. Hizashi sat down with his husband, who was sitting on the couch, sloppily looking through the few reports the police had on Deku. It was mostly accounts of people being rescued, very few villain fights, and one scuffle with a hero. The number 2 hero to be specific. They should ask Deku about that. They really should ask him about everything. Well, can you really blame Izuku for leaving the apartment as soon as he woke up? This was all moving way too fast. At least he left a note. But he did plan on staying. Izuku really liked Aizawa and Yamada's home. He liked them, too. Yamada was friendly and welcoming and held an air of loudness and joy. Aizawa held the same welcoming and fond aura but in a much calmer tone. He should draw the 2 stark contrasted men one day. The sunflower yellow would look great against dark raven. While Izuku did wonder if the 2 heroes would be okay if he stayed, he kept reminding himself that he didn't have a choice. It was getting colder these days and last winter Izuku had gotten frostbite. He never wanted to do that again. Izuku got to the homeless shelter and told the lady at the front he was just going to visit someone. After being approved, he went all the way to the back and found Kaito's little sister. She perked up as soon as she saw him. "Hey, Nisan. Mito's here," she shouted. Kaito, who seemed to have been writing on something, whipped around and flashed a smile. "Mito! What's up, little buddy?" Izuku smiled at him too. "Oh, besides being shot, nothing much." Kaito's eyes widened. "I have something to tell you though." The other boy lowered his voice. "What the F, Mito?" Izuku's smile wiggled a bit. "Yeah, okay, I got super hurt last night and I might not be sleeping on the street this winter." "Is that what you needed to tell me? Because you didn't give enough details." "Bill." "Now." Izuku chuckled and retold what had happened yesterday. After he finished, Kaito sighed, but it sounded happy. "Well, mister, I got shot and it's no big deal. You finally aren't a feral child anymore." "I've got good news too." Izuku raised an eyebrow. Good news for Kaito just meant free stuff. "My family got a place to live, Mito. Can you believe it?" Izuku's eyes widened at the same rate his smile did. Super fast. For a minute, he just gaped at Kaito. Then, his feet moved on their own, and he did what Izuku never thought he would ever be able to do again. He hugged him. He hugged someone. "I'm so happy for you, Kaito." Kaito seemed very surprised at Izuku's action but quickly melted into the hug, cherishing this moment. "I'm happy for you too, Mito. But I swear if they try to hurt you or make you uncomfortable dash. I know, I'll go to your family's flat. But there's no need to worry so much over me. I promise I'll visit." Izuku said. Kaito slipped him a piece of paper with the apartment address on it. "Don't forget me, little dude." Kaito huffed dramatically. Izuku rolled his eyes but kept a genuine smile on his face. Izuku walked down the bustling main road of downtown and recounted all the places that he had scuffles in. 2 in that alleyway, 5 next to that shop. A villain killing a cop in the corner, a thug harassing a girl in the next. He strolled past the taiyaki shop and the phone booth that was next to it. There were some leftover blood splatters, but it had rained last night so most of it had been washed away. Izuku shuffled past old memories, bad and good. One thing was for sure, he was never going near the hideout bar H&DJB had. There were too many bad memories there. Someone knocked on the door and Shoyuta answered it. Deku stood on the other side, looking down at his feet shyly and bouncing his leg. Shoyuta chuckled. "You came back. Come in." Shoyuta carefully watched Deku come into the apartment. He didn't look up once and he seemed embarrassed for coming back. "Where'd you run off to?" "I had to talk to a friend of mine, he got a new house," Deku answered and bit his lip. "I'd been thinking, Dezawa, that I could dash." He mumbled something incoherent. "Speak up, kid. Can I please stay with you for winter?" Deku breathed, almost too quiet to hear. Shuta's eyes widened and the kid looked up at him and yelped. "I promise I won't be a bother, it just gets freezing and I'm prone to frostbite. I swear I'll only be here for winter dash." Deku talked a lot for a person who doesn't talk a lot. It's fine. Deku continued to mumble. Hey, calm down, I said it's fine. Shoyuta could hear the tiny gasp Deku was trying to restrain. He lowered his voice to a whisper. Listen, kid, the vigilante stuff you were doing was very illegal. But since you're a minor, punishment isn't too harsh and there shouldn't be any for you considering you never looked for fights. Staying here isn't a problem and Hizashi will be thrilled. We aren't going to take you in or anything, but if you're going to stay here you should put a little bit of trust in us. If you aren't comfortable telling us something then that's fine, but taking in a stranger is something I hope you can appreciate. Deku nodded with quickly. Now, go to your room and get settled. When Hizashi comes home from the studio he's going to make udon, Aizawa said. Deku turned and started to head off, but stopped mid-step and whirled around. Sir? Call me Aizawa. Yes. Please call me Izuku. Shoyuta was tempted to gape at the young boy but kept his composure. Okay, Izuku. Izuku smiled at him and happily started to head back to his room. Problem child had a name now. Izuku. Shoyuta made a beeline to his office and looked for missing persons reports, scrolling down eyes. After almost an hour, he came across one with a fluffy green hair and large eyes. A nervous smile engulfed the little kid's face, and though it was now covered in scars, it was the same smile that Aizawa had just seen in his living room. He opened the file. Midoriya Izuku. Quirkless. Birthday, July 15th. Address, unknown, present day. Age reported missing, March 16th, XXXX. Kiss close. Hello, Tsukachi? Yes, I would like to reopen a missing persons case. Hizashi called down Sho and the little listener to the table. Deku looked particularly shaky when sitting down but gratefully accepted the meal. Though, Hizashi couldn't tell if it was good manners or if the boy was just scared. Sho tapped his shoulder as they sat down and gestured with his eyes towards the boy. Deku had been picking at his food, and he kept repeatedly sniffing at it as if it had offended him somehow. Hizashi noticed the boy had been doing that last night too. Hey, little listener. Is there something wrong with the food? Deku squeaked. No, sir, it's just. It's a habit. I'm sorry. It's really good though. Oh, well, it just looked like you were inspecting it. Thanks for complimenting my cooking. Sho here is so picky he only eats one type of udon. Deku looked over to Sho and blinked sheepishly. I believe it. Hizashi giggled. Sho made a fake pout on his face. Whatever. Hizashi just giggled harder. He looked back at the child in front of them and saw Deku smiling to himself. Not something too noticeable, but he was struggling to hide it and was looking at Sho and Hizashi curiously, almost like a cat who has never seen a human. They all finished their food with relative silence, Sho and Hizashi making the most conversation. Hizashi stood and went to the sink and started to wash dishes, and Deku tapped him on the back. The boy handed him his dirty bowl and bowed. Thank you for the food, sir. You're welcome, Deku. Please call me Hizashi or Yamada. Oh, call me Izuku then. Hizashi blinked. So you do have a name? Izuku scratched the back of his neck softly. Why yeah, sorry about the blockhead thing. It's all good. I think Sho said something about wanting to talk to you after dinner? He should be in the living room doing some paperwork or something. Izuku gulped but didn't comment. Thank you, Yamada-san. No worries. Hizashi waved. Aizawa? Yamada-san told me you wanted to tea talk. Shuta's head snapped up from whatever mindless paperwork he was doing. Come sit down. Izuku sat down on the back of his hands and rocked back and forth. I wanted to talk about your past, Izuku. Izuku groaned. Because I'm filing a report on you. You said your mom abandoned you, right? And you said something about that quirk. Why do you care? Izuku snarled. It happened in the past. There's no reason to tell you about my mom, or the stupid Leah dash. Izuku stopped himself. The stupid what? The boy glared weakly at him. You're a pro hero. I forgot. I should probably tell you about the League. Shoyuta blinked. The League? Yeah, Izuku said, the League of Villains. Shoyuta rubbed his eyes. You were Affiliated with villains? I guess. I was. It was my mistake, I went with him on my own. Who is him? Izuku stood up and dashed into the guest room and grabbed his backpack. He sped back to the couch and opened his sketchbook with desperate eyes. He flipped to a page with a pencil sketch and shoved it into Shuta's chest. That's Shigaraki Tamura. Or as I know him, Shimura Tenko. Izuku shuddered. I didn't know his real name at first, but I'm small. Good for fitting in small places and eavesdropping. Shoyuta looked over the sketch. The man in question was skinny, almost sickly looking, and wore a hand over his face. A single eye stuck out with the word red written next to it. Shigaraki had unruly hair that was labeled light blue. The hand over his face was labeled father. Is this the man that kidnapped you? Izuku nodded shakily. Why, I have sketches of most of the villains there. Tenko. He killed a lot of people. A lot, and his quirk is disintegration or decay. Here. He lifted his pant leg to his knee and pointed to his midcalf. He touched me here. With all F5 fingers. That's how he activates it. It's one of the only scars on my leg. Shoyuta looked over the scar. It looked like broken glass put back together with hot glue. The skin, though already healed, it was red and irritated. You run and walk with that? Yeah. It doesn't hurt anymore, Izuku said, though it sounded like he was convincing himself. Shoyuta felt rage bubble up in him but kept his cool exterior. Scaled a wall with injuries like that. Izuku shrunk back. Why? Shoyuta sighed to calm himself. Why did he have to take in an insane stray? Tell me more about the league. This is Kurogyri, Izuku said, flipping pages. He's pretty much the most powerful. He has a warp quirk. It's almost way too powerful, but he has a physical body, he explained, pointing to a sketch of a cloud man in a tailored suit, scrubbing dishes. He's actually pretty nice, very polite, but he wouldn't tell me why he became a villain. Kurogyri is the transportation, but his quirk can also cut people in half and stuff like that, Izuku snorted, but he was kind of a softie. One time he made me a milkshake after almost cutting my arm in half. Shuta's eyes widened. On accident? Nope. Izuku said, popping the P. I have tons of mental notes on his quirk. I don't even think he actually wanted to be a villain. He seemed tired and lonely all the time. Maybe Sensei forced him to work for him? I don't know. Who's Sensei? Shoyuta asked. Izuku gulped and put down his sketchbook. He looked at his shaking hands and sighed. You're a pro. Do you know All Might? Shoyuta squinted. Why would you like to know? I can't. I have to. I can only talk to him about Sensei, okay? I know too much. And if I told you, you and everyone you loved or knew would die. That's a tad dramatic and tropish. Izuku shuddered. Unfortunately, it's true. You wouldn't want Yamada-san to get hurt, right? That scared Shoyuta. So, you can't tell me anything about this Sensei person? No, but he's the reason I have this, quirk. Gave it to me. Izuku's voice cracked wetly. He killed someone for it. Izuku pressed the palms of his hands onto his eyes. I knew him, not really, but I had met him before, Sensei. He murdered him in front of me. He tortured him to death. Shoyuta reached out to the boy, but Izuku snapped his head up and faced him, tears streaming down his face. You want to know what I did, Aizawa? He sat there, screaming and crying while someone got their guts ripped out for this stupid but quirk that I didn't even want. Kid. Izuku kept talking. Sensei is the evilest man in all of Japan, and he's All Might's worst enemy. That's why I need to talk to All Might. I can give him tons of information on Sensei. He's training that beats Shigaraki as a successor. Which, by the way, is absolute bullshit since Shigaraki was pretty much kidnapped by him too. Shoyuta let the information to sink in. I thought I can get you a testimony with a detective that knows All Might personally. Would that be okay? Izuku dried off his tears with his sleeve. Sure. Are you still okay to talk about your parents? Shoyuta asked. Do you want to go to bed? It's not like I'll be able to, anyway, Izuku said, still angrily scrubbing the tears off his face. Shoyuta brought out a notepad from his paperwork bag and flipped it over. You'll probably need to hand over your sketches to the police, at least the villain ones. Izuku nodded. That's why I made them. So, I'm filing a missing persons report on your name, but for me to fill it I need to know anything that could make you unsafe if your parents decide they want custody of you. Technically, your mother has legal custody over you if you were found, but you said she abandoned you. Even if I wanted to, I don't think I could go back in her care. I told you my dad left because I was quirkless. Izuku paused, waiting for Shoyuta to finish scribbling on his paper, and my mom's health declined from there. She started drinking, not talking to me. It's like she couldn't function without him. Should've heard stories like this before. It didn't make listening any easier. In my opinion, my mom was a nice person. Before all that happened. But my dad wasn't as nice as her. He was never home, and when he thought being a hero was a dumb dream and only cared if I had a quirk or not. And when it turned out, I didn't have one. He just straight up left. No screaming, no arguing. Gone with a slammed door. He was legally obligated to pay child support, but my mom acted greedily when she was drunk. She didn't have many friends, and she would put the blame on me. That I was the reason Dad left and that she couldn't do anything because of me. And I believed it. I might still believe it. Izuku took a shaky breath in and cracked his knuckles. One time, he choked out, she got mad enough to throw a bottle at me. Wasn't her fault. Not one bit. She was under the influence and I annoyed her. The bottle shattered and scared me, so I slept in the park for a couple of days and came back. Shoyuta wanted to snap the pencil he held out of rage, but luckily his resting beach face stayed in place. Why'd she throw a bottle at you? Izuku chewed his thumbnail. I asked. For food. I didn't. I hadn't eaten in a while before that and I wanted food. And when it didn't work out, I left, taking one loaf of bread from the kitchen and booked it to a nearby park. Stayed there for a couple nights. I ran out of bread, so I went back and she seemed happy and sober. We're able to hang out after that for a week or so. She apologized too. Kiddo, are you Dash? And then she got drunk again. It was horrible, Izuku said, too wrapped up in his head to bother with listening to Shoyuta. There were bottles all over the apartment. She looked dead. I walked up to her, asking if she was okay or if she needed me to clean. I had just turned 6 years old. Those days I was in the park. Kid, if you're Dash. She told me to get in the car and I knew she wasn't supposed to drive, but I wasn't about to stop her. I got in the car and I don't say anything because you just don't question her when she's had too much to drink. My mom stopped in this weird alleyway, I think it was somewhere in Kamino. And she told me to get out of the car. Shoyuta scribbled more notes down. Does that? When she left you? Izuku nodded slowly. I thought I starved myself after she left. I went almost 3 days until Shigaraki picked me up, promising food or something. He took me to a bar. I think it was also in Kamino. A lot of other stuff happened. I think I spent almost 2 years in the villain's hands. Shoyuta kept scribbling notes, his concerns steadily rising and him not knowing how to show it. Can you tell me anything about the setting of the base? Yeah. The bar was where Shigaraki and Kurogiri lived. There were extra rooms there and I was transported there. Anytime I got hurt. They had doctors at the other base, but they weren't really doctors. More like evil scientists. Anyway, Izuku proceeded to describe the bar in fine detail while Shoyuta wrote about as fast as the kid could speak. And the warehouse? Shoyuta asked. Holy shit, I hated that place. Full of rats and bugs. And blood. And dead people. It was all very, 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 very bad. Izuku exclaimed with a sense of childish horror, his tone of voice jarred Shoyuta. I had surgery done there unwillingly, I died there once. People were murdered there. It was the opposite of anything good. They made monsters there. Insane. Language, Shoyuta deadpanned. What do you mean by monsters? Izuku shuddered. The scientists and sensei made these insane multiple-quirked monsters called nomus. He used the dead corpses as the foundation for the bodies and piled quirks onto them. They were basically like puppets that could crush your skull. If Shoyuta wasn't horrified before, he was now. Did this sensei guy target certain people to create these? Izuku thought a moment. Mostly homeless people, I think. If you go on the missing persons police files, I bet at least half of them were turned into nomus. Is that why they took you? Yes, Izuku stated, but there was another reason. I'm Quirkless, and they were trying to make a complete human nomu. You see, to make a nomu, you need to use human bodies for flesh and keep writing notes, animal DNA to make up the rest. They have brains, but their only function is to obey commands that the person in charge of them gave. The monsters aren't practical for stealth, though. Kinda hard to hide a monster in a crowd. That's where Experiment 234 comes in. Experiment 234? Shoyuta echoed. Also known as me. Izuku said with sarcasm, I'm lucky Quirkless number 44, the one who was going to be different. So, you were used as an illegal experiment for 2 years and lived among live corpses? Wow, you really are blunt. I never thought of them as corpses though. That might have made me even more afraid of them. You know I had to fight one? And it was made out of a dug-up body from a nearby cemetery? Super gross. Shoyuta rubbed his temple. You know what? I kinda sound like a sociopath. Sorry, but Experiment 234 was a procedure where the doctors took quirkless people and prepared them for forced quirks. They mostly used quirkless adults, but they all died. I was next in line, but I was different because my body was still developing, and if they put the quirks in, then they should have grown with my body. The more quirks you add to a person, the more they lose themselves. If I had 3 quirks or more, I would be in a catatonic state, unable to move on my own or have a personality or memories or opinions. You get the point. Sensei's theory was that a quirkless person could hold more quirks because they don't have to nerves that connect the quirk to the body. If he forced a quirkless person into the desired catatonic state, then a surgery where the right brain was removed would happen, and it would be replaced with a chip that made him and other villains able to command it to do their bidding. You keeping up? Shoyuta was going to have to take an entire bottle of Advil after this. What the f had this kid been through? He nodded in response to Izuku and furiously scribbled in his notepad. Anyway, this procedure was also used on people with weak quirks, but it wasn't as effective. Since I survived the first quirk put on me, I became Sensei's big project. Until I escaped, of course. He still hunts me down, and now you've taken me into your home, which is immediately putting you and your husband in danger. How do you know Hisashi's my husband? Saw his ring. You don't wear yours because you're an underground hero. It's a weakness, Izuku sang. Shoyuta blushed in his scarf. Whatever. I'm getting you an appointment with a detective tomorrow so you can contact All Might. This could be useful information for the future. There's more than what I told you, but All Might can protect himself. And I can't. Shoyuta protested. Sensei could probably demolish this apartment complex without blinking. I think you should trust me. Shoyuta squinted in suspicion. I've never heard of this villain. That's because the government doesn't want real quirk history to be known to the public. It's pretty gruesome. Not for the weak-stomached. Oh come on, Shoyuta pushed. This guy can't have lived that long. He's like 200 years old. Shoyuta blinked. What? Yeah, Izuku said, rubbing the back of his neck. He's old. And evil. Shoyuta just stared at the boy sitting across from him. A loud mew interrupted their staring contest. You have a cat? I love cats. Shoyuta turned his attention to his cat. Her name's Kimchi. Izuku smirked. You named it after some noodles? Hisashi named it after watching some Korean drama where a girl slaps some guy with a handful of kimchi. Izuku bust out in giggles. I saw that video in the library. Yamada-san's funny. Shoyuta abandoned his notepad and picked up the fat cat. He dropped it on Izuku's lap and Izuku almost squealed with delight. It's so effing cute. Language. I would die for her, Izuku said, ignoring Shoyuta. Please don't. Hisashi already claimed that action. Izuku let the cat settle in his lap and patted her. His smile was thoughtful and sad. You and Yamada-san. You guys love each other? Yes, Shoyuta said softly, I do love him. Does he love you? Does he love you back? I would hope so. He proposed to me. Shoyuta smiled, fond of the memory. Izuku scrunched his eyebrows. Is that normal? For people to love someone like that? Enough to cook? Yeah. Lots of people have NTMT relationships with others. Many of them do cook for each other. Izuku laid his head on the cat's fur. I don't want you, Yamada-san or Kimchi to get hurt. You can't hurt us, and neither will that stupid villain, Shoyuta said. I promise. I need you to promise me you won't get hurt. You'll give me back to them if they find me. Please. I promise, Izuku. Okay. Bonus. Can I sleep on the couch with Kimchi? Izuku asked. Sure, Shoyuta said. Hisashi's asleep, I'm going to join him. Don't break anything. Yes, sir. Izuku whisper yelled. Good night, Izuku. Good night, Mr. Aizawa. Thank you for everything. I'm not taking it for granted. I know, kiddo. I know. Shoyuta whispered to himself. Rough laughter clouded my ears like opera in a concert hall. It was more of a cackle, actually, and it scratched against any ears most unfortunate to hear it. A broken man with raven-colored hair lay crumpled in a pile of rubble, blood pooling quickly. I quickly run over to him, my red, worn shoes almost catching some rocks to trip on. I drop to my knees as tears flow freely down my face. My eyes flick over to the man's face and I see his dark eyes clouded with the stain of death. Why? I think, I'm nothing, so why? The man takes a sharp breath and his strange scarf falls a little to the left of his chest. I feel for a pulse and it's there, it's just so weak. Weak like me. I sob out the name of the man. Aizawa, I say, wait. You promised. His heartbeat stops and I sob into his black hoodie, staining it with my tears. Why you had no right. I shout through my sobs. The laughter picks up again. This, the voice says, was all you. This is what happens when the weak become weaker. Those around them are weak too. That man had no reason to give up his strength for you, but he did. You know why, young one? Answer me, child. No, I do not, sensei. Because he pitied your weakness. This man would still be alive if it weren't for your weakness. That's why I will give you power. I promised you that, no? I didn't agree to it, sensei. I bite back sharply. Who said promises were mutual? Maybe, they don't really matter. Look what happened to yours. First, the foolish performer girl, now him. His was more painful, I'll have you know. A bullet would have been better. I hate you. I scream, I hate you. Laughter fills my ears until I feel I am lifted by it, in a tornado of self-pity and hatred. The wind of one simple cackle takes the air out of my small lungs and carries it away from me and anything I might have loved. And I deserved it. But they didn't. It's my fault. Izuku woke up to Kimchi liking his hand affectionately. He was lucky he wasn't the type to flail while waking up after a nightmare. Izuku couldn't bear the thought of hitting the cat or breaking something. He brought his hand up to his cheeks and felt wetness. He had been crying in his sleep. Angrily wiping the tears away, Izuku sat up on the couch and cracked his back. Kimchi mewed at him, and it sounded sympathetic. Sighing, Izuku walked to the window in the kitchen. Moonlight shone through brightly and nature had always helped Izuku calm down. Peering out the window, Izuku saw a small garden hanging out the window in a box. It had little labels on the colorful flowers. The box was growing daffodils, and underneath the name it said, meaning, rebirth. Izuku sighed. Even flowers meant something in this little apartment, and it reminded him of something Himari told him a long time ago. A nice household will have many things that remind people of what they miss, want or treasure, she had said, hair a bright orange, the color of daffodils. That's why many people put pictures and decorations up. It reminds them of what matters most. Izuku was startled out of his thoughts by Kimchi rubbing herself against his ankle. She purred and Izuku bent down to pet her. Tears splattered on the ground. It was just a dream, you idiot, he scolded himself. You have no reason to be crying. He didn't bother wiping the tears away as Kimchi liked her black fur. It was a beautiful sleek shade of black that shone in the moonlight, complementing Izuku's tears. When Shoyuta decided to take a break from paperwork at 3:30 in the morning, he did not expect to see a crying child hugging his cat in the moonlight. Though, he did have a weird instinct to take a picture of it. "Hey, Aizawa?" Izuku said, not looking at him. "Did I wake you?" "No," Shoyuta replied, taken aback by being noticed immediately. "Why are you awake?" Izuku let out a wet laugh. "You should know, sir. Sleepin' is hard." Shoyuta hummed in agreement and started up the coffee machine. The two sat in comfortable silence as the machine whirred, and the cat purred almost as loud. Izuku was still crying. "Why are you crying?" "Nightmare," Izuku muttered vaguely. "About what?" Izuku brought his sleeve up to his face and dried his tears quickly. "Nothing important." Shoyuta grabbed a mug out of the cabinet. "They say telling people about your nightmares are supposed to make sure they never come true." "I've never heard of that." It may or may not be true. The important thing is if you're ready to tell someone." Shoyuta poured himself his coffee. "You don't have to dash. You died." Sensei was there too. Shoyuta realized he should have expected something like this to happen. He picked up a traumatized kid off the street and he was so unprepared. "Listen, kid. I promised you this. But I'm a pro hero. If I have to fight, Sensei, I will." "Well, if you insist on dying then I'll die for you." "Hado, wait. That sounded strange." Shoyuta groaned. How many more versions of Hisashi's dumb quotes were going to come out of the poor kid's mouth? "I don't mean to say I'm going to die in the line of duty, and it's not like I want to either, I'm just saying it might happen." "Fine," Izuku sniffed, "but you won't let Sensei kill you. Go ahead with other villains, but I won't allow him to kill anyone I talk to." Shoyuta squinted. "What are you going to do?" "I'll give myself back to Sensei. After I tell All Might what I need to tell him. There is no reason for me to keep running away, because they'll just kill me. If I go with Sensei before he figures out who helped me and I grew attached to, then he'll kill them. I'd rather just be killed quickly." Shoyuta pulled at his hair. "That's not right, Izuku. You shouldn't just give up like that. At least think of your safety first." "No, I'm done with running away, sir. And I'm done with having people die for me." Shoyuta blinked away the completely non-existent wetness in his eyes. "Maybe we can make a two-way promise." Izuku perked his head up. How about this? I promise not to die from anything having to do with this Sensei person, and you will not accept your death at the hands of Sensei. I want you to stand your ground. Fight back in any way you can." "Even if I die anyway?" "Even if you die anyway," Shoyuta assured him, "because everyone dies anyway. You see, Izuku, the whole point of living is to see how long and what you do with the time you have here. And I will not let you give up on it." Izuku nodded. The two of them sat in silence once more, only Shuta's clinking coffee mug making noise as Kimchi sauntered out of the room. Izuku stood up and looked out to the daffodils again. "Hey kid," Shoyuta called out, "what do you want to do when you're older? Any profession?" Shoyuta secretly knew what he was asking. I dunno. After I was taken, I gave up on thinking I was going to make it to age 10. So the future wasn't in mind. Izuku fidgeted with his thumbs. He always wanted to be a hero, I guess. "And why is that?" I want to help people because no one should go through pain. And though I know I can't save everyone, I can try," Izuku stated, still fidgeting, but determination shining in his emerald eyes. Shoyuta nodded. He checked the microwave clock and it read 5:34 a.m. "You think you can get more sleep, kid?" Izuku yawned. "Yeah. I'm going to bed. Good night." "Good night, sir." Shoyuta definitely did not have a soft smile hidden in his scarf as he walked out of the room. Did he imply he was attached to me? "So you got me a testimony with the detective that knows All Might?" "Yes, we'll be leaving in 2 hours. Bring your sketchbook." Aizawa said. "Okay." Izuku replied, excited. Even the thought of telling All Might what he knew about One for All and All for One was like a weight off his shoulders. He hoped the hero wouldn't be mad at him for knowing his secret. It wasn't Izuku's fault. Sheet, Izuku thought, All Might wouldn't know that All for One is still alive. You want me to get All Might for you? The detective deadpanned. Yeah. Detective Naomosa was the supposed friend of All Might's that Aizawa had introduced Izuku to. The man was extremely plain, and his quirk wasn't obvious, but he knew it was called lie detector because he had asked Aizawa in the car. It kind of essay since Izuku's main tactic to surviving the world was to lie, but this plain man and his beige trench coat was the only thing separating him from All Might, so, for once Izuku had to speak the truth. Why do you need to speak with All Might? He's a very busy man. I know. I've something to tell him. It better not be personal. It must be very important if you want to talk to him face to face. I will be judging that. You were associated with villains, yes. Kidnapped, technically, Izuku murmured. Naomosa leaned back in his chair and observed Izuku. How do I know you aren't on the villain's side? That's mean. I hate them. I hate them more than anything. I'm trying to give you the dirt on them. Well, you're not lying. Naomosa relaxed in his chair. What do you need to tell All Might? Izuku bit his lip. I don't know if I can tell you. I don't have all day, kid. You're one of All Might's close friends, right? Like really close. Yeah. He must have told you then, Izuku muttered, landing his fist in his palm. Does the name All for One mean anything to you? Naomosa's eyes grew to the size of dinner plates. He cleared his throat. I'll be back, stay here, okay? The kid, Midoriya, gave him a concerned look as Naomosa rushed out of the interrogation room. If that kid knows about, he must be alive still. Naomosa fished his phone out of his pocket and shakily pressed Toshinori's emergency contact. Please answer. Please FING answer. Hello. Hi, Toshinori, can you please come down to the police station? Yeah, what's going on? There's a kid here who knows about, you know who. The breath on the other line hitched. I'll be there in a minute. Izuku hummed a song that Himari used to sing to him to calm himself as he waited for the detective. Ooh, yellow in my hair. Feelin' sunshine on my face. I never want to leave this place. Smells like flowers. Ooh, look, there are the rain showers. But it's fine. I'll stay dry with you. What you wear makes you feel bare. But the yellow stars will cover you. Ooh, only you and I, we will go. Go together. Stay in this place, leave together. The detective came back through the door and straightened his trench coat. So, he started, you were kidnapped as a quirkless experiment? Izuku nodded, playing with his thumbs nervously. He didn't really like being interrogated, especially in this small room. It made him feel caged, like his cell at the villain hideout. And the man who kidnapped you was All for One. No. The guy who kidnapped me was his, successor, I think? Anyway, his name was Tenko Shimura dash. Did you say Shimura? The detective asked, looking on the verge of a heart attack. Yeah, but he goes by Shigaraki Tamura dash. Please, save it for All Might. He's on his way. This was finally happening. Was Izuku ready for this? The detective's walkie-talkie spurred to life and Izuku jumped violently. Sir, All Might has arrived. He is waiting out front. Let one of my men escort him. It's late, the rest of you should go home. Tell Aizawa-san this will take longer than we thought. Copy that. The communicator clicked and the detective clipped it back onto his uniform. I'll be right back. Izuku's anxiety spiked when Naomosa left the room. He was finally going to meet All Might, finally expose the League of Villains. But at what cost? His own life was to definitely be disposed of, but these nice people didn't deserve to die. Sensei would find out Izuku was the one who told but, hello, young man. I am here. That goddamn booming voice. Izuku couldn't hide his smile. Hey, he waved. But that's how you greet the symbol of peace? Good job, Izuku. Good FING job. I heard you have information on the villain All for One, yes? Why, Izuku stuttered. All Might and Naomosa sat in chairs across the table from Izuku, All Might with his uneasy but bright smile and Naomosa with his serious yet nervous expression. So, Naomosa started, All for One is alive? Wait. Oh, Mr. All Might? Yes, young man. You should stop straining yourself. I don't want you to waste your hero time on me, because of your injury or something. All Might froze. His smile wavered. Naomosa put a hand in front of All Might. What do you mean by that, Midoriya? I mean All Might can go to his smaller form because I know about his injury. All Might spit a bit of blood out in surprise. That's what I'm talking about, Izuku said, pointing to the hero's blood-stained shirt. He shouldn't be straining himself. Naomosa put his hand down. All Might's body became engulfed in steam and he deflated into the blonde-haired skeleton man that Sensei just loved to show pictures of to Izuku. Look at this, young one. Sensei held up a photograph of a pale blonde that was so skinny even Izuku may be able to snap him in half. The man's bangs were long and sharp-looking, while the back of his hair seemed to be fluffy, reminiscent of a lion's mane. Sensei held up a picture of All Might next to the skinny man's picture. What if I told you that your symbol of peace was actually just this frail little man? Would you believe me? Izuku had no choice but to agree. Yes, Sensei. Can you see the similarities? He could really see them. The man had the exact same clothes and noticeable belt buckle as All Might. The hair color was the same and the height was close enough. Izuku believed that man was All Might. A pitiful form, isn't it? You know, I did that to him. I am quite proud of myself. The symbol of peace can only work for 3 hours a day now. You still can't possibly believe he will still save an unimportant little project like you, can you, Izuku? No, I cannot, Sensei. Izuku lied through his teeth. He didn't need All Might to save him. The man already gave him hope that maybe one day he'll leave this place. He was reminded of hope every time he looked at his Silver Age figurine. His captors never took it away from him, therefore never diminishing his hope. All Izuku had to do was lie. A simple thing. Not even a Deku like him could screw it up. Since Sensei fed him lies, Izuku could throw them right back in his face. But he knew when the man was telling the truth. Because the truth is sad. And All Might's small form may be sad, but what was inside shined with hope. All Might, sir? Yes, young man. Izuku stumbled across his words. Before we start I just want to thank you for, being you I guess. The whole symbol of peace thing really is that's the only thing that keeps me going today. If it wasn't for you I think I may have not have made it out of the villain's hands alive. So, thanks, Izuku continued, and I understand that you're limited on your hero tea time, and of course you won't be the symbol of peace, forever, but I hope you find someone good to pass your quirk on to because I just can't imagine someone being in my shoes and making it out without someone like you to hold on to. So, thank you for being my hero. All Might stared at him with his sunken eyes, something akin to guilt glowing in them. I'm sorry I didn't save you. It's okay. You being here is enough. Ko Hiroka. Description: simple gecko mutation. Ko was a nice, average man. He had a normal family and a fairly normal quirk. He lived his life with an ordinary job as a hotel manager. He was still a bit young to have his own family, and love wasn't exactly on his mind. He had his friends from college and they went out every so often. Ko was fine with living his life without making an impact on the world. He was content. Normal. He's been told his quirk is useful, even good enough for something as dangerous as hero work. His skin was mottled with brown and very soft and bumpy at the same time. His tail dropped at a young age because he almost was hit by a car. His eyes were a soft blue with slitted pupils that seemed to blink very little, but it was because of his invisible eyelids. Otherwise, he had the build of a human and the health of one. The only part of his quirk that was strong was the two most dangerous: thermal vision and skin shedding. His doctor said those were extensions of his quirk that have pretty dangerous properties, some not even portraying to only geckos. Thermal vision gave extreme migraines and skin shedding that felt like another quirk on its own. He could manipulate his skin, but it required self-harm to do so. Ko just wasn't that kind of person. Nor did he have the heroic heart to do it for someone else's well-being. So, he kept his quirk name as Gecko. It just sounded calmer than whatever else he could name a scary quirk like his. He followed the laws of quirks. He didn't use his quirk in any way, shape, or form. KO was just another speck. Not important. Getting jumped on his way back from work was not ideal in the slightest. Little did KO know he was going to be a part of something much larger than his non-existent ideals. A week before he was attacked, he had noticed two men were following him around. They were large and intimidating and wore masks over their mouths. Nothing else was abnormal about the men, it's just that they followed KO everywhere. He started taking a different route home and staying at a cafe until the men would. Still, he would see them at work out of the corner of his eye. They always stayed far away but close enough to see KO. One day, the men started chasing KO. FNG sprinting at him. KO ducked into an alleyway but the men caught up anyway. All he remembered was being punched and kicked and then, black. He didn't defend himself or anything. He was too afraid to think straight. KO looked up to see a child staring at him. The kid had bright emerald eyes and curly green hair. He's awake now, the child whispers. Toshinori felt numb. All for one is still alive. 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 And this poor boy had to suffer because of All Might's failure. Sorry, Eraserhead, but the testimony might take a little longer than we thought. Shoyuta had been sitting in the waiting room for a while now and he was started to get worried. Testimony? It's not an interrogation anymore? No, the police officer stated. The detective found the kid was telling the truth and the number one hero is with him. All Might actually came? Just how serious is this? According to the boss, the situation is very confidential, as the things that kid knows are kept extremely under wraps from the public. So, how long will the testimony take? Anywhere from 1 hour to 4, plus the kid might have to swear to secrecy. Shoyuta groaned. Police stations were drab. What in the world could that kid know? Oh, and Eraserhead? Call me Aizawa, please. Aizawa-san, you wanted those temporary custody papers, right? You can fill them in while you wait. Shoyuta sighed, only a little miffed because of the wait time. At least he could be productive. Yeah, I'll do them. First things first, Nemosa started. Did your kidnappers inflict harm on you or other people? Toshinori rolled his eyes. Standard procedures were annoying. At least the kid was very polite when he wanted to be, and took the testimony seriously. Yes. And you can definitively say this man was all for one? Yes. How could you tell? Well, Midoriya rested his cheek on his hand, he told me. And I saw him use his quirk, which is also called all for one. Midoriya blew a strand of curly hair from his face. He used it on me too. Nemosa heard Toshinori's breath hitch. The blonde spoke up. Did he take your quirk away? Midoriya frowned. No. Technically I'm quirkless. That's what I should be registered as on my file. That's what Aizawa-san said at least. So what did he do to you? Toshinori asked. Midoriya scratched his neck uncomfortably. He gave me a quirk. Toshinori's face morphed into a painful expression and given one for all's history, the expression made sense. Nemosa took the chance to talk again. Why do you think he did that? I dunno. I don't think it had anything to do with me personally, probably only for the experiments. Experiments? Yeah. Experiment 234 Quirkless # I think. No, I'm sure 44 was my number because they always called me that. Nemosa scrunched his nose. Do you know if you were branded? What does branded mean? Did they mark you, like with a tattoo or burn with your number? I dunno. Well, next time you shower, check. Those things are serious. K. Nemosa looked back to Toshinori who looked like he had a million questions burning in his eyes. It annoyed Nemosa a bit because Toshinori needed to wait. He knew how much the number one hero hated All for One, but this kid's health was a lot more important at the moment, and Nemosa just prayed he remembered they were talking to a kid and not a device that gave out information. Toshinori opened his mouth but Nemosa was faster. Did All for One give you the information you know on All Might? Midoriya glanced to the blonde and back to Nemosa. He did it because he wanted me to turn into a villain. Shimura told me that they wanted me to be a villain dash. Midoriya was interrupted by All Might spitting blood out of his mouth. Dash. I forgot to tell him. Did you say? Shimura? Toshinori Whisperer yelled the last part like he was afraid of it. Yeah? The guy who kidnapped me, his name was Shimura Tenko. Toshinori whipped his head around to face Nemosa look at him with a look of betrayal. Did you know? No, he doesn't know that. I know about that, Midoriya said. I know about your relationship to the Shimura family. It came as a shock, but then I asked Sensei and he explained it to me. Of course, he explained it with bias, but I still know. I'm sorry for what happened. All Might stood shakily and pulled out his phone. I need to call someone. I'll be back. All Might exited the room trying to dial a number on his phone with his large bony fingers. I'm sorry for making him leave, sir. But did I do something wrong? The boy looked genuinely confused, though not hurt. He was probably good at hiding his emotions since he seemed pretty apathetic on the surface. No, you're doing just fine. Thank you for having patience with him. Midoriya nodded and yawned. He buried his face in his arms and rested his upper body on the table between them, like a kid who falls asleep in class. A couple of seconds later, Nemosa heard soft snoring. Wow, Eraserhead's already rubbing off on him, huh? You must understand, Toshi, she wished for me not to tell you dash. Well, now her grandson is a villain. There are no excuses for that. Toshinori was fuming. Gran Torino knew about this the whole time, that his master had a child, and hadn't stopped to think even about where the kid is now. Master's child had a son and she never bothered to know. The kid's a villain, Toshi. We can't do anything about it, dash. That's what you think, dash. What if the guy chose to be a villain on his own accord? We aren't legally bound to do anything, nor can we do anything. And you can't go up in another fight against All for One so soon. It's been years since I fought him. His condition is unknown, he may be barely alive, dash. It's a slim chance. Knight, I already predicted your death, dash. I have 5 years left, I can take care of him during that time, dash. Toshinori. There is nothing we can do about the child. Accept it. For your own good. I can't just leave Master's grandson with the top supervillain, dash. Just get the rest of the story from that kid the testimony is coming from. It's out of our hands. He's not a Shimura anymore. Izuku always dreamt when he slept, even if it was just a short cat nap. He's never had it. Good dream though. He really didn't expect to fall asleep so easily in a police station of all places. Usually he'd be way too alert with other people around, but he was super tired. Maybe it was because the #1 hero and Eraserhead were in the building, but still, it was strange falling asleep like this. His dream was calm, considering the other ones he's had. Just his mom. His mom, running. Izuku's had this one a lot. The person his mom is running away from is always him. The issue was, he barely remembered what his mom looked like. He couldn't even draw her because of this. All he remembered was that she had straight green hair. So the woman in his dreams would always have an eerily blank face. Izuku was such a light sleeper that when he heard All Might's heavy footsteps come back into the room, he jolted right up. Detective Naomosa sighed, took a swig of coffee and wrote something in a little notepad that he didn't have before. Sorry for leaving so suddenly, I had to take a call. All Might sat down, a lopsided smile over his gaunt face. It was so obviously fake. Izuku hated fake smiles, but All Might's smile was always fake. Plastered on T-Guy's face. Still, it made Izuku feel better. He didn't know why. Okay, let's continue, Naomosa mumbled. Can you describe the villains at the hideout? Izuku nodded. Sen's All for One kinda looked like a potato. His face was all messed up. I think that was the damage you did to him. Izuku pointed to All Might, who had snorted at the potato comment. And he always wore a suit. I didn't know why. He had a lot of tubes connected to his face and stomach, because he couldn't breathe with them. Naomosa furiously continued to scribble on his notepad while Izuku continued. His hair was gone too. The doctors were covered with masks and stuff. Couldn't sim. Shigaraki? Naomosa bit his lip at what All Might asked. Shigaraki H had light blue, almost gray-looking hair. It was messy and curly. Then he always wore black. Sometimes he'd wear a t-shirt with words but they were in English and I can just barely read kanji so Izuku chuckled nervously. I don't know what they said. His eyes were red like bee blood, almost. And he had these scars on his eyes and lip, and he always looked kind of crusty because of some weird wrinkles around his eyes and dash. Izuku almost face-bombed himself. He didn't need to explain all this. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out the multiple sketched-out memories he had of his time in the villain hideout. Whether it be a person or a scene, the drawing gave plenty of description. I forgot I had these, huh? They're drawings, he said dumbly. Pretty good ones, actually. Naomosa smiled, and he looked so relieved. All Might picked up a pencil sketch of Shigaraki. His lips slightly quivered, just enough for Izuku to see. Did he actually have this mole? The hero said, turning the page around and pointing to the villain's chin. Yes, sir. The hero's shoulders trembled, but it looked like he was trying to suppress an explosion inside of him. It was then, for the first time, that Izuku realized All Might wasn't just a figure, not only someone for you to put your tears on, but he was a human without a shoulder to cry on. All Might, are you okay? Fine. Izuku thought about the pressure put on this one pillar. All Might was always brave, and no one ever gave him time to show remorse. His master died and he was shipped off to America. He fought all for one and didn't take time to slow down or recover, because Japan needed him. The man couldn't even bring his thoughts together on the fact that his master's grandchild was a villain, someone he wasn't quick enough to save. You know, heroes can cry too. Naomosa looked up from his notepad and the drawings and stared at Izuku. All Might did too. Did he do something wrong? All Might let out a watery chuckle. I've never had anybody tell me that. Thank you, young Midoriya. Naomosa just looked bewildered. A bit awkward too, like he had invaded something. I have a few more questions for you, young man, if you're ready, he said, coughing as if reminding the two that this is a testimony. He tapped a piece of paper that had an extremely detailed picture of something Izuku would rather forget. Can you tell me what's happening here? That look on your face is quite amusing, I must say. Izuku was sobbing on the floor. He watched as Sensei stabbed his weird quirk fingers into Keio's chest. Izuku had gotten to know Keio since they shared a cell for 2 weeks, but now he knew why Sensei put them in the same cell. So Izuku could get attached. It was probably Tamura's idea. Keio's lifeless body slid out of the chair he was strapped to a moment ago. He was only unconscious, but Izuku could see the man's quirk slipping away. The bumps on the man's skin receded, and his half-lidded eyes turned into normal pupils. A bit of blood came out of Keio's eyes, not unlike tears, probably because of how painful the feeling of his invisible eyelids disintegrating was, as Sensei's quirk was not kind to mutant types. Get up. He's not dead. You look pathetic. Shigaraki's voice hissed from the corner of the room where his body was engulfed in shadow. Are you going to let him go back to his L life? Izuku croaked. Sensei's sadistic smile widened. Patience. This isn't your story to plan. Sensei started to walk towards Izuku, but he scooted back, trembling. Stay still or I'll make you, he threatened, though it sounded like a parent speaking to their child. Not a good parent, of course. Sensei crouched down to Izuku's level and he could feel the small amounts of oxygen seeping from the mask and tubes protruding out of his face and abdomen. He grabbed Izuku's head and Izuku impulsively tried pushing him away. It worked to no prevail since it was a malnourished 7-year-old versus a world-class supervillain. You know, you always remind me of my little brother. I feel like I'm back to that same day. Remember when I told you about One for All? This feels the same, and sometimes I think I may be making another mistake. Shigaraki spoke up like the weird little teacher's pet he was, saying, Oh no, Sensei, you could never make a mistake. Sensei silenced Shigaraki by putting his free hand up. Izuku was still trying to pry his hand off his face. Stop struggling. This will be terribly painful, I assure, because mutant quirks don't sit right with the body. Your cells will be ripped apart and put back together in a horrifying manner. But if all goes right, experiment number 234 will be a success. You will be the first with what I like to call a non-existent mutant quirk. And if we pile more onto you, you could just become the first human Nomo. Doesn't it sound nice to finally get a quirk after years of not having one? Izuku sobbed. I don't want it. Especially from you. Brave words, my child. It's too bad, Midoriya Izuku. Suddenly, Izuku saw white. Just blinding, bright white. Pain. 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 It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. Sumio any please. It hurts. I'm Bu Rening. It burns. Why is it me? Pain. 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 Help me. Let me out. Let me out. Let him out. Let me out. Get me out of my head. Help me please. Izuku felt as if every part of was being ripped apart and put back together with hot glue. The pain was unbearable, and he became a sobbing, writhing mess on the dirty floor of experimentation room. He felt himself heave blood, and he felt himself cry blood. He listened to his own screams for an eternity. It hurt. Why? Make it stop. Make me stop. Midoriya Inko's life got better depending on which perspective you look at it. She moved to America in hopes of finding her husband but started to fool with other men. Her drinking habits never stopped. In fact, she sought bars out instead of drinking at home. She had a couple DUIs and had passed out on the streets more times than she could count. She mooched off the child support money Hisashi sent. He didn't need to know Izuku was gone. She loved her life. No job, a small but apartment in Chicago, parties every night, and no worries over a child she didn't really want. The thing might have made her stressed or made her fat. How horrifying. She would never subject herself to that sort of trouble. Oh, and a quirkless one too. No way that would make her look good. She was much happier being a skinny, bulimic, narcissistic, selfish, drunk off her butt, Botox-filled beach in snowy Illinois. The list of things that were morally wrong about Midoriya Inko was a long one. She was one of those who thought gays were a nuisance and that she was entitled enough to scream in a marketplace about how much she deserved her tea tree oil for free, then blamed it on the American influence. She was just so annoying, you could almost believe she was an anti-vaxxer, that is of course if she didn't abandon her only child. It's funny how people like her always have to learn the hard way. Hopefully, karma's a beach, just like Ms. Midoriya Inko. Aizawa Shoyuta is a tired man, a gay 20-something who tries to rationalize his life, even though he would do anything for the people he cares about. He learned quickly as an underground hero that life was effed up and the government was corrupt. Why is he going to foster a child? Same reason he works as a hero. Maybe it wasn't rational, but there are times when feelings can climb over rationality. Sometimes. Throughout his time signing papers, renewing his emergency foster card, and calling Hisashi, he got various updates on Izuku. The most concerning one was that the villains that kidnapped him as a kid were still chasing after him. That's why the kid didn't want to go to Shuta's house at first, fearing he would cause another death. Shoyuta could handle this. He is one of the toughest pro-heroes out there. Plus, how hard can parenting really be? It wasn't rational to think that way, but it calmed his nerves, so he hoped it to be true. Hisashi Yamada is a kind but hardworking man, a gay 20-something that had what seemed like a mess of a life when actually, it was organized as F-. He had 3 jobs, a radio show host, a pro-hero, and a UA teacher. A lot went on in his life, but he still made time for his husband and sleep, somehow. People underestimate him and he uses it to an advantage, and his positive attitude never failed, even though he knew how effed the world and society was. When his husband called him to ask about fostering a kid, Hisashi saw no problem with it. He'd secretly always wanted a kid, and this was a great opportunity. He knew this particular kid needed extra attention, and he was a legal affair, but Hisashi was more than happy to give that attention. The poor kid needed it. Dearest Inko, I know it has been so long since I've spoken to you and Izuku. I do hope you are doing well, and I know our divorce was rough on you, and you fought for custody of Izuku, which you got. I have recently had a change of heart. I know you didn't want him, and I'm guessing you still don't. I'll put it simply, I want custody of Izuku. Of course, if I get that, you'll be the one paying child support as I have in the past, but you won't have the child to take care of. I'm sure you remember my job in New York City, and that I am well respected there. I have plenty of lawyers, just to heed a warning. If you put up a fight, I will most likely win the trial. As of the moment, I have no idea where you and Izuku are, though I know people who can easily track you down. So, please. I will set up a court date, probably months and months away, so you have time. Just sort it out because I need custody of my son. Regards, Midoriya Hisashi. Hisashi Midoriya quickly looked over what he had written in his email draft and sent it to Inko. He is the leader of a well-known American crime organization, with a big name in the underground. Funds are lower than usual, and child support money could really save his butt. He doesn't actually want his kid back. Who wants a quirkless son? That's just absurd, to keep around something so useless. He'd probably just leave the thing on the street if he got custody. No, when he got custody. Hisashi's favorite thing to do was play dirty. Though, it takes a dirty soul to make dirty deals, doesn't it? Naomosa knows the ups and downs of the government, each branch, and each country's way of running things. He is the perfect detective, lawyer, and he is passionate. A perfect recipe to win anything in court or otherwise. He got quite attached to Izuku Midoriya in the interrogation room, and he had to admit, the kid's story was probably the worst one he'd heard his entire career. The passion in his eyes is promising, and he was happy to let Eraserhead take the kid and nurture him towards a place where his past wouldn't reach. The interrogation was shaky and the kid was very nervous. A few times it looked like he might have been close to a panic attack, but he had held it together well. The kid gave him a smile as he climbed into Eraser's car and thanked Naomosa for letting him rant a bit. He said it was like sharing stories with someone named Ko. Naomosa just smiled back and told him that he might have to see him again, but his testimony and drawings would greatly help them bring his kidnappers to justice. Midoriya had said he sounded like All Might when he said the word justice. Naomosa only remembered that Midoriya is in fact a kid when the 11-year-old asked All Might for a signature, in which Toshinori just laughed and complied, praising the kid for his good work in the interrogation room. Midoriya had blushed and thanked him quietly. They'd all grown close during the short 2.5 hours in the interrogation room, and both Naomosa and Toshinori hoped to see the boy again, and praying Eraserhead took good care of him.